What if the secret to great leadership, lasting success and real inspiration wasn't actually about what you do or even how you do it, but maybe something much more fundamental? We tend to get really fixated on the tangibles.
Yeah, the metrics.
Exactly. The profit margins, the market share, how many people are involved. But what if there's this deeper, almost invisible pattern happening? Something that unlocks incredible influence and this really fervent, unwavering loyalty.
That's a really compelling question, isn't it? This whole idea that behind, every truly inspiring movement or breakthrough product or even just an impactful leader, there's this kind of foundational belief.
Right.
Something that goes way beyond just the mechanics or the features. It really suggests that our usual assumptions about what drives success, well, we might be missing the most critical piece.
Absolutely. And that's pretty much exactly what we're diving into today. We're unpacking Simon Sinek's groundbreaking book, Start With Why: How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action.
Ah, yes.
And this isn't just, business strategy or corporate leadership stuff. Sen makes this really compelling case that it's about a natural, almost biological pattern.
Biological.
Yeah, of thinking, acting, communicating. And it applies to basically everything. From how innovative products get developed to how huge social movements catch on, even how you build a life that really, truly inspires you.
What's really fascinating there is Sinek's argument that this pattern isn't some kind of rare, unteachable magic,
Right.
Instead, he suggests it's discoverable, it's repeatable. It's a principle that's actually rooted in how we humans are wired, how we make decisions and form those really deep connections.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive then.
Well, I think our mission is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from this really powerful source, help you understand not just what Sinek is arguing, but why it matters. And crucially, how you might be able to apply some of these, frankly, surprising facts to your own life, your work, all without feeling like you're drowning in information overload.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's get into it. So let's start right at the beginning, logically. Why? Start with why. Sinek kicks things off with this concept of natural-born leaders. But not like people born with some special trait you can't learn.
Right.
It's more like individuals who just operate differently. They inspire, rather than just motivate. And they do it through this distinct way of thinking, acting, communicating that he claims anyone can actually learn and replicate.
Right. And to really illustrate this, he pulls us into one of the most compelling stories from the 20th century.
Yeah.
The race for manned flight.
Oh, yeah. Langley and the Wrights.
Exactly. So on one side, you've got Samuel Pierpont Langley. Back in 1903, everyone thought he had the recipe for success.
Right. He had everything going for him on paper.
Totally. He had a huge chunk of government funding, $50,000 from the War Department, which was massive back then.
What?
He had a dream team, literally the top scientific minds, the best materials available, and constant media attention. Everyone was watching him. And Langley's motivation seemed pretty clear. Personal fame, fortune, that's what he was after. But despite all these, overwhelming advantages, his machine just crashed spectacularly.
Right into the Potomac, wasn't it?
Yep, twice. Meanwhile,
just a few hundred miles away, you have Wilbur and Orville Wright working out of this humble bicycle shop in Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, worlds apart.
They had none of Langley's perceived advantages. No government grants, no fancy connections. Not a single person on their team, including the brothers themselves, even had an advanced degree.
Right.
Yet their passion to fly their why was apparently so intense, so deeply felt, it inspired this incredible dedicated commitment from their small team.
And well, we all know how that story ends. December 17th, 1903, they pull off the first manned powered flight.
Just incredible.
And Sinek says the profound difference here. It wasn't luck. It wasn't just work ethic or even having smarter scientists. Both sides had those things. The Wright brothers, Sinek argues, succeeded precisely because they started with why. They were driven by this unshakable belief that flight would fundamentally change the world.
A cause.
A cause, exactly. And that belief inspired their team to push through failure after failure, seeing every setback not as an end, but as a step closer to their goal. Langley, on the other hand, he was motivated by what he could achieve personally, the recognition. So when the Wrights succeeded first, his why just evaporated. He quit, just like that.
That distinction is incredibly powerful. And Sinek applies this same idea, this same lens, to other big shifts like the personal computer revolution.
Yeah, Apple.
Right, Apple Computer, Steve Wozniak, Steve Jobs. They weren't just, building computers. They saw themselves as revolutionaries.
Challenging the status quo.
Exactly. Aiming to challenge how things worked, empower the individual. The PC wasn't just a product for them. It was their tool, their weapon almost, to ignite that revolution.
Wozniak designed the tech to be accessible, easy to use. And Jobs, well, he wanted to make a ding in the universe, right? Do something significant.
And the results were just staggering. Apple's revenue went from, $1 million in year one?
Yeah, something like that. Then 10 million in year two, 100 million by year four.
To $1 billion in just 6 years with thousands of employees.
Yeah. And that explosive growth, that sustained success, and that almost fanatical customer loyalty, it happened even as lots of other capable companies were jumping into the PC market.
So it wasn't just about having a good product.
Sinek argues no. While many others were part of the PC revolution, very few achieved Apple's kind of sustained impact and devotion. Apple inspires, he says, because it consistently starts with why.
And it's not limited to business or inventions either. He points to the civil rights movement.
Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah, his incredible impact. King wasn't perfect, Sinek notes. He wasn't the only charismatic speaker around or the only one suffering under segregation. Yet he inspired hundreds of thousands of ordinary people, united them with this single powerful vision to change the country. The March on Washington, August 28, 1963.
The famous one.
Famously, there were no mass invitations sent out, no website, obviously. Yet 250,000 people just showed up.
Just amazing.
And Sinek's point is, they came not primarily for him, they came for themselves, for a cause that was much bigger than any one individual. He, too, started with why.
And this really leads us to a crucial distinction Sinek draws out, which is motivation versus inspiration.
Okay, what's the difference there?
Well, motivation, he explains, is often tied to external things. Incentives, bonuses or threats, fear, short-term gains. It can definitely compel behavior.
Sure, like a deadline gets you working.
Exactly. But it rarely builds lasting loyalty. People act because they feel they have to.
Right. Whereas inspiration?
Inspiration, he argues, is deeply personal. It's about people acting because they genuinely want to. And those who are truly inspired, they're willing to pay more, put up with inconvenience, sometimes even endure significant personal sacrifice. They become this truly loyal following, whether they're customers or voters or employees, and they act for the good of the whole group, not just out of obligation.
Okay, I see. So inspired organizations, they have more influence.
Disproportionate influence, yeah. They cultivate the most loyal customers, the most committed employees. They tend to be more profitable, Sinek finds, and consistently more innovative. It creates this really powerful, virtuous cycle of growth and impact.
This really makes me think about, our own assumptions.
Yeah.
How we perceive truth. Sinek uses this really clever thought experiment.
Oh, the JFK Hitler one.
Yeah. So imagine I describe someone born in 1913. Charismatic, powerful speaker, rose to power, changed the world, eventually died by assassination. Who comes to mind?
Probably JFK, right?
Almost certainly. But then I add just one more detail. That person was born in Germany.
Yeah.
Suddenly, all those same facts point directly to Adolf Hitler. The details are identical, but that single piece of context just completely flips the assumption.
It's a striking example of how easily we make decisions based on, incomplete information or what we perceive to be true. We jump to conclusions that feel certain but might be fundamentally wrong.
Like the whole world is flat belief.
Exactly. That perceived truth massively limited exploration. People were literally afraid of falling off the edge. But correcting that one detail, the world is round, it unleashed incredible changes. Global trade, massive innovation.
So how does this tie back to business or organizations? Do we really understand why some succeed and others just don't?
Well, often Sinek suggests decisions are based on these incomplete perceptions. Even when things go well, it doesn't mean we actually understand why or if it's repeatable.
Like your friend the investor blames the market for losses.
Right. But credits his own genius for the gains. You can't really have it both ways, can you?
No.
And this is perfectly illustrated by that Japanese auto plant analogy Sinek uses.
Oh, the rubber mallets.
Yeah. So American car plants back in the day might have guys at the end of the line with rubber mallets, literally banging the doors to make sure they fit properly, a common practice.
Okay.
But when American execs visited a Japanese plant, they couldn't find anyone doing that job. They asked where the door fitters were, and the Japanese guy just smiled and said, essentially, "Oh, we make sure it fits when we design it."
Ah, Build it right from the start.
Exactly. They engineer the desired outcome right from the beginning. Failure, in that mindset, points back to the initial decisions, the design. Sinek calls this design by intent, not design by default. It's all about getting the why right from the very start.
And this design by intent, this inspiration approach, is the total opposite of what Sinek calls carrots and sticks.
Right, which is basically manipulation versus inspiration. He observes that most businesses today, honestly, they struggle to truly explain why their customers are their customers.
Or why their employees stick around.
Yeah. They're often operating on flawed assumptions, and so they resort to manipulations because, well, frankly, manipulations do work, at least for short-term gains.
So what are these manipulations he talks about?
He identifies several really common ones. Price is a big one.
Discounts. Sales?
Exactly. Highly effective for immediate action, right? But it eats away at profit margins, and it trains customers to only buy when there's a discount. Think about GM's huge cashback incentives.
Right. They lost money on cars eventually.
They did. Boosted sales temporarily, but led to a big loss per vehicle. And when they reduced the incentives, sales just tanked. It creates these cashback junkies who only respond to the next deal.
Okay, what else?
Then you have promotions, 2 for 1, free toy inside. Rebates are a classic example here.
Oh, yeah, the hoops you have to jump through.
Right. Sinek argues they're often intentionally designed with complicated steps. Send the receipt, cut out the tiny barcode, fill out a detailed form specifically to increase breakage. Meaning, customers just give up and don't complete the claim. It's almost like a tax on the disorganized. The seller gets free money, but what does that do to trust in the long run?
Yeah, not good. What about fear?
Fear. Sinek says it's arguably the most powerful manipulator, whether it's real fear or just perceived. He uses that striking image of a bank robber holding up a bank with just a banana in his pocket.
Right, it's the belief there's a gun.
Exactly, and that drives compliance. Think of the old saying, no one ever got fired for hiring IBM. People chose the safe, known supplier, maybe not the best one, out of fear for their job. Fear overrides facts. We see it in marketing, politics.
Those old anti-drug ads. This is your brain on drugs.
Yeah. Terrifying. It creates this perceived value through threat.
Okay, what else is in the manipulation toolkit?
Aspirations. These motivate you to move towards something desirable. They work well on people maybe lacking discipline or feeling insecure.
Like gym memberships in January.
Perfect example. They spike for New Year's resolutions, but most people fade out by March. It spurs that initial behavior, but often doesn't last because it's not connected to a deeper, sustainable why.
And peer pressure?
Peer pressure, definitely. Phrases like millions of satisfied customers or experts prefer this brand, it leverages our fear of being wrong or missing out. Celebrity endorsements are a huge part of this.
Right. Does Tiger Woods selling golf clubs make sense?
Yes.
Selling GM cars.
Or a Tag Heuer watch. Sinek really questions the long-term effectiveness if the celebrity doesn't genuinely embody the company's core belief or WHY.
Yeah, the fit has to feel right.
And lastly, there's novelty. This one gets confused with true innovation all the time. Novelty is just a new feature, like the Motorola RAZR's cool metal case back in the day.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. Thin.
Super thin. It drives short-term sales, sure, but it doesn't fundamentally change an industry. True innovation, Sinek argues, like the light bulb, the fax machine, iTunes, changes how industries or society function. Too much novelty without a clear WHY can just lead to products becoming commodities. Think about the toothpaste aisle, dozens of variations from the same brand. Or those need help deciding buttons online.
Yeah, overwhelming.
Apple's iPhone, he contends, was innovative not just for its features, but because it redefined how the mobile industry worked, with Apple calling the shots with service providers. That was the real disruption.
So, okay, these manipulations work short term, but what's the ultimate cost?
Sinek is emphatic. They never breed loyalty. Ever. They demand more and more investment over time just to maintain the effect. They increase stress for both the buyer and the seller. And ultimately, they're only really sustainable for companies with super deep pockets or those just focused on fleeting short-term wins.
And he makes that distinction between repeat business and loyalty, right?
Crucial distinction. Repeat business is just transactional. Customers keep buying, maybe because of the latest deal or convenience. Loyalty, though, that's when people are willing to turn down a better price or a better product to keep doing business with you. Even put up with inconvenience. Loyalty isn't easily won. Repeat business can be bought with more manipulations.
The American car industry learned that the hard way.
Absolutely. Their heavy reliance on deals and incentives became totally unsustainable when the market shifted, like during the 2008 oil crisis. They just didn't have that loyal following willing to stick with them through thick and thin.
Unlike Southwest Airlines after 9/11, that story's amazing.
Isn't it? Instead of abandoning them, customers actually sent checks. One person sent $1,000 and notes of support.
Just wow.
Financially, maybe not huge in the grand scheme, but symbolically, it was this powerful testament to a deep sense of partnership and loyalty born directly from Southwest's unwavering commitment to their WHY. And that loyalty has fueled their incredible profitability over decades.
And the stress factor you mentioned, it affects everyone.
Yeah, Sinek argues it creates immense stress across the board. For buyers, it's exhausting trying to choose between seemingly identical options differentiated only by the latest gimmick.
Right.
For companies, it's this constant frantic hamster wheel of trying to differentiate based on superficial stuff. He even cites Peter Wybrow's book American Mania, which argues these pervasive corporate practices, rooted in manipulation, directly contribute to societal stress ulcers, depression, high blood pressure.
Oof.
Manipulations are the norm, Sinek admits, but he insists there is a profoundly different, more sustainable, more human alternative, starting with WHY.
Okay, so if manipulations are the norm but not the path to loyalty, what is Sinek's alternative? How do we build that lasting inspiration? This is where he introduces the golden circle.
Right. And it's such an elegant concept. It's actually inspired by the golden ratio.
A mathematical thing, like in nature.
Exactly. That formula that seems to describe proportions in seashells, leaves, snowflakes, finding order and predictability in the natural world. And Sinek argues the golden circle does something similar for human behavior. It reveals order and predictability there, and it has really practical applications, improving leadership, culture, hiring, product development, sales, marketing, even creating social movements and fostering that deep loyalty we talked about.
And the key is starting from the inside out.
That's the fundamental shift. It all starts from the inside out, beginning with why.
Okay, so let's break down the circle. Outside first.
Outside first. That's what? The outermost ring. Every single company, every organization, every person knows what they do. It's your products, your services, your job title. Easiest thing to identify.
Got it. Moving in.
The middle ring is HOW. Some companies and some people know how they do what they do. This is where you hear terms like differentiating value proposition or proprietary process or unique selling proposition.
The stuff that makes them different.
Right, or at least what they think makes them different or better. It's often mistaken for the real differentiator.
But the core, the center.
The innermost ring, that's WHY. And Sinek points out very few people or organizations can clearly articulate why they do what they do.
And not just to make money.
Definitely not. Money is a result, he stresses. WHY is about your fundamental purpose, your cause, your core belief. WHY, does your company exist beyond just making a profit? WHY, do you get out of bed in the morning? And crucially, why should anyone else care?
That's the big one. Why should anyone care?
Exactly. Now, most organizations, Sinek observes, think, act, and communicate from the outside in.
What then, how, then why?
Pretty much. They say what they do, maybe they explain how they're different or better, and then they expect you to buy it or take action. But this communication style inevitably leads to comparisons based just on price, features, quality.
It commoditizes everything.
Perfectly put. It turns everything into a commodity. But the truly inspiring companies, the Apples of the world, they communicate from the inside out.
Start with why.
They start with WHY, their purpose, their cause, their core belief. Often it has nothing directly to do with the products themselves.
Right. Apple's Think Different wasn't about computers initially.
Exactly. Instead, what they do, their computers, phones, music players, those things serve as tangible proof of that deeper cause. The design, the user interface, yeah, they're important. But Sinek argues they alone aren't enough to generate that incredible, almost cult-like loyalty.
Because others can copy the what and the how.
They can, and they do, but they can't copy the deep, authentic why.
So Sinek's big line.
His central mantra: people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Say it again.
People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. It sounds simple, but it's profoundly transformative when you really grasp it.
And Apple's success stems from this.
He argues yes. Their consistent ability to innovate across totally different categories and command that insane loyalty comes directly from this clarity of WY. Their core WHY, something like challenge the status quo and empower the individual, gives them amazing flexibility.
So people are okay buying a computer, then an MP3 player, then a phone from them.
Even though they're totally different things. Because people align with that core belief. That's why Apple could launch the iPod years after Creative already had the Zen player.
Yeah, they weren't first.
Not even close. But they articulated why you needed 1,000 songs in your pocket. It wasn't about the tech specs. It was about changing your relationship with music. Same with the iPhone later. They transformed industries where they had zero prior expertise, purely by starting with WHY.
Which leads to the fuzzy why problem for other companies.
Exactly. If an organization defines itself only by what it does, that's all it can ever be in the minds of consumers. Think about Gateway or Dell.
The computer companies.
Right. They tried to make TVs, MP3 players, PDAs, but it never really stuck. People saw them as computer companies. They lacked that permission, that flexibility Apple has. You just wouldn't see people lining up for hours for a Dell phone like they did for the iPhone.
Because the WHY wasn't clear or compelling.
Precisely. Companies stuck competing only on price, quality, service, features. They just become commodities. Knowing your WHY is the way out. A clear WHY means you don't have to constantly convince people or use those carrots and sticks.
And what about that lifestyle idea? Does Apple sell a lifestyle?
Sinek pushes back on that. He calls it the lifestyle fallacy. It's not that Apple or Harley-Davidson sell a lifestyle. It's more that people who already live or aspire to a certain lifestyle are drawn to those brands because the brands serve as tangible proof of their own beliefs. The brand fits the lifestyle. It doesn't create it.
Like the Ferrari versus the Honda Odyssey example.
Yeah, great example.
Yeah.
Is a Ferrari objectively better? It completely depends on why you need a vehicle.
Right. Need to haul kids? Odyssey wins.
Completely. But people feel this deep, visceral pull towards a Ferrari because it aligns with their WHY. Maybe it represents performance, freedom, success, whatever. The rational stuff, the engineering, the specs, that just becomes justification for a decision already made emotionally in the gut.
Paying extra for a red one isn't logical.
Not at all. It signals a deeper, non-rational preference. Loyalty, Sinek argues, isn't built on just claiming you're better, even if you have data to back it up. Inspiration, rooted in that WHY, that shared cause, is what creates real, lasting loyalty.
So starting with WHY, it's the key to lasting success.
Sinek argues it's the only way to maintain lasting success, plus genuine innovation and flexibility. When a company's WHY gets fuzzy, manipulations inevitably creep in, and those cost more and more over time.
Like the railroads. That's a powerful cautionary tale.
It really is. Late 1800s, railroads were huge, dominant, but they became obsessed with what they did. We're in the railroad business.
Instead of why they existed.
Right. Which was actually transportation connection. So they poured all their money into more tracks, better engines, and completely missed the boat, or rather the car and the plane, when those new forms of transport emerged. It's a stark warning for industries today, isn't it? Think about music, newspapers, TV, struggling to define their value beyond the old what. Sinek poses, if music companies had truly understood their WHY, maybe they would have invented iTunes.
Wow, that's a thought.
The call to action then becomes, stop asking, what should we do to compete? Start asking, why did we even start doing what we're doing? And based on that, what else can we do using today's technologies to bring our cause to life?
And he says this isn't just opinion, it's biology.
Yeah, this is where it gets really fascinating. He grounds the golden circle firmly in how our brains actually work.
Okay, biology. How does Dr. Seuss fit into this? The Sneetches.
Right. It sounds whimsical, but Sinek uses the Sneetches, the ones with stars on their bellies and the ones with that.
They're getting stars put on, taken off.
Exactly. He says it perfectly captures this fundamental human need to belong. We humans will go to incredible lengths, do frankly irrational things, spend money, all to feel connected and safe with people who share our values and beliefs.
So when companies communicate their WHY,
and we believe it, we resonate with it, we start incorporating their products, their brands as markers of our own values, like wearing a t-shirt or putting a sticker on your car. It's a signal of belonging. Fan clubs, he notes, are formed by customers, not companies, reflecting that deep desire for community around shared beliefs.
Okay, so how does the brain structure map onto the golden circle?
This is the core of the biological argument. The golden circle aligns almost perfectly with the three major layers of the human brain.
Go on.
So the neocortex, that's the newest part of our brain, evolutionarily speaking. It's responsible for all our rational, analytical thought and language. This, Sinek says, corresponds directly to the what level of the golden circle, the things we can easily describe and analyze.
Okay, the outer ring. What about the inner parts?
The middle two sections of the brain make up the limbic brain. This is much older, more primitive. It's responsible for all our feelings, trust, loyalty, love, anger. And critically, it's also responsible for all human behavior, all decision-making.
Wow, feelings and decisions.
Yeah. But here's the kicker. The limbic brain has absolutely no capacity for language.
No language.
None. It corresponds to the HOW and, most importantly, the WHY levels of the golden circle.
Okay, wait. So the part of the brain that controls decisions doesn't have language.
Exactly. And this biological structure perfectly explains why it can be so difficult to put our deepest feelings into words. Ask someone, why do you love your spouse?
You stumble. Ah, well, she's funny, smart.
Right. You rationalize using the neocortex, the language part. But those words don't fully capture the deep limbic feeling, do they? Sinek argues we often make decisions with our limbic brain, then struggle to articulate why using our neocortex.
Which means market research asking why might be flawed.
Hugely flawed, potentially.
Why?
When you ask people why they chose something, they'll likely give you rationalizations that sound plausible but don't reflect the true underlying limbic motivation. It's not that they're lying, it's that the decision-making part can't talk.
So gut decisions, they're actually limbic decisions.
That's exactly Sinek's point. They just feel right, because the same part of the brain controls feelings and decision-making. Neuroscientist Richard Riestack even suggests these gut decisions are often faster and higher quality. Overthinking, relying only on the neocortex, can lead to slower, worse decisions. Trust your gut.
Like shopping for that flat-screen TV.
Yeah, you get totally bogged down in specs resolution, refresh rate, HDR neocortex overload.
All right.
Then your friend says, oh man, I just love my new Sony. It just feels great. And suddenly, that emotional limbic input sways you more than all the data. Companies that only communicate what force you into that difficult, uncertain, purely rational space. And that's where manipulations thrive.
So winning hearts and minds, the order matters.
Sinek thinks so. The heart is the limbic feeling brain. The mind is the neocortex, the rational language center. Most companies focus on winning minds' features, benefits, price. But to win hearts, to build real loyalty, you need more. The phrase itself suggests the natural order. Hearts first, WHY, then minds, W.
That laundry detergent story really drives this home.
That's brilliant, right? The industry was obsessed with whiter whites, brighter brights, adding chemicals based on what customers said they wanted, neocortex talking. But then anthropologists observed people, and what did they find? Everyone instinctively smelled their clean laundry right out of the dryer.
The feeling of clean.
Exactly. Feeling clean, that sense of freshness and comfort, was actually more important than being measurably chemically clean. The WHY was about that feeling, not just the additives. False assumptions, based on listening only to the neocortex, had swayed an entire industry.
Just like cell phones needing more buttons until Apple showed otherwise.
Right. Or German car makers thinking engineering alone was enough for American buyers. The power of belief, that limbic connection, is undeniable. Think about the Apple cult or Harley tattoos. That's not rational brand preference. It's deeper. It's a cause, almost a faith.
The products become symbols.
Symbols of what the company believes, and just as importantly, symbols of what you believe about yourself. Which brings it all back. Clarity of WHY is absolutely essential. Without it, a logo is just a logo. And differentiation relies purely on those manipulations: price, features, service, quality, competing on the what.
Okay, so is starting with WHY and connecting to that limbic brain is the key. How do you actually do it effectively? How do leaders make this happen? Sinek emphasizes balance in the golden circle.
Right, balance in the right order. He breaks it down into three critical components. First, clarity of WHY.
You have to know it.
You absolutely have to know why you do what you do. If people buy why you do it and you don't even know, how can anyone else? He says this is often the simplest part to discover, maybe looking back at the origins, but it's surprisingly hard to maintain clarity over time.
Okay, clarity first. What's next?
Second is the discipline of HOW. This is all about accountability. Are your actions, your processes, your values actually aligned with your WHY? It's how you bring that WHY to life consistently. Sinek notes this is often the hardest part to maintain day to day.
Like that Samsung rebate example they chatted in Matt.
Exactly. The complex, frustrating rebate process completely undermined any value statements they might have made, eroding trust.
And the third piece.
Third is consistency of what? This is where the rubber meets the road. Everything you say, everything you do, your products, services, marketing, PR, your company culture, who you hire, all of it must consistently prove what you believe. We live in a tangible world, Sinek reminds us, so consistency in the what is crucial for demonstrating authenticity.
So authenticity isn't something you aim for directly.
No, it's a result. It's what emerges naturally when there's perfect alignment and consistency between your what's and your WHY. Think about Dell trying to sell MP3 players. It just felt off, inauthentic.
Because their WHY wasn't about music or mobility.
Right. Their WHY, if they had one clearly articulated, was probably about efficient computer manufacturing. It didn't feel right to consumers.
And the ultimate outcome of this balanced circle?
Trust, which leads directly to that deep, unwavering loyalty. Without that authenticity born from balance, relationships remain weak and you're forced back into competing solely on price, service, and quality. The what's.
Southwest Airlines, again, seems like a poster child for this.
Absolutely. Their founders, the gregarious lawyer Herb Kelleher and the numbers guy Roland King, they had this incredibly clear WHY from the start.
Champion the common man.
Make air travel affordable, accessible for everyone. Back in the 70s, flying was exclusive. Only about 15% of people did it. That was their cause.
And their HSW was?
Meticulously designed, low cost, point-to-point flights, none of this hub-and-spoke stuff, super quick turnarounds on the ground.
And the what was simply cheap tickets and direct flights.
Exactly. But crucially, the low price wasn't the WHY itself. It was the tangible way they brought their cause to life, and customers felt it. They felt Southwest spoke directly to them.
That story about the executive flying premium for work, but Southwest personally.
Yeah, told by former President Howard Putnam. That's loyalty beyond price, right? Based purely on shared values, feeling connected to the cause.
And it led to incredible financial success.
Most profitable airline in history, never lost money, even through 9/11 oil crises.
Yeah.
Everything they do reflects that unwavering WHY. Compare that to United or Delta trying to launch their own low-cost carriers, like Song or TED.
They just copied the HIW.
They copied the what and the how, though, the cheap seats, the different branding, but they lacked the animating WHY, the core belief. So inevitably, they failed. They couldn't replicate the inspiration.
Sinek's dating analogy is pretty funny here, too.
It's brilliant. The bad date, he says, starts with what? I'm rich, big house, nice car, no famous people.
All surface stuff.
Right, focusing only on achievements, tangibles, might get some initial interest maybe, but it's not building a real trusting relationship.
Whereas the good date
starts with WOS, Y. You know what I really love about my life? I get to inspire people to do things that inspire them. It feels amazing. Then, maybe later, shares the what's as proof. And because of that, yeah, we do pretty well. Got nice offices.
Builds connection first.
Exactly. Builds rapport based on shared beliefs. And Sinek's point is simple. People are people. The biology of decision-making doesn't magically change when you walk into an office or go online to buy something. Too many companies just present their resume, their what's, hoping to seem desirable. It's like the bad date.
He also talks about 3 degrees of certainty in decisions.
Yeah, this ties back to the brain science. Level 1, I think this is the right decision. That's based mostly on rational stuff, neocortex analysis, lower confidence.
Okay.
Level 2, I know this is the right decision. That's when the facts align with that gut feeling, that limbic sense of rightness. Higher confidence.
Right.
But the highest level, the strongest conviction. I know this is the right decision, and I know why.
Clarity of WHY makes decisions easy.
Effortless, almost. When your WHY is crystal clear, you can instantly see if something aligns. You can confidently turn away clients or opportunities that seem good on paper but don't fit your WHY, even if it means short-term pain. Because the goal isn't just any business, it's doing business with people who believe what you believe. That's the foundation of real trust.
And that leads perfectly into the emergence of trust. The Continental Airlines turnaround under Gordon Bethune is just incredible.
A legendary story. Before Bethune, Continental was completely broken. Employees felt abused, they were famously surly, actually ashamed to work there.
Losing hundreds of millions.
$600 million in 1994 alone, dead last in performance metrics. And that detail about the executive floor being locked, security everywhere.
Says it all about the lack of trust.
Totally. Then Bethune comes in, and his WHY was simple but revolutionary for that industry. A company's first job is to look after its employees. Happy employees lead to happy customers, which leads to happy shareholders, in that order.
Employees first.
Employees first. And he acted on it immediately. Fired nearly 2/3 of the top executives who didn't buy into the new culture. Told employees to clean the planes, not just for customers, but for themselves, because they had to work there every day.
Took down the locks.
Removed security from the executive floor, instituted an open door policy, even went down and personally slung bags with the handlers. Walked the talk.
And the incentive change was genius.
Brilliant. Instead of bonuses tied to abstract revenue targets, he gave every single employee a $65 check each month. The airline ranked in the top 5 for on-time performance.
Something they could actually control.
Exactly. It cost millions a month, sure, but way cheaper than the cost of chronic lateness. And sending it as a separate check, not buried in their paycheck, symbolized winning together. It was a tangible, thank you for helping make us the best.
And the results?
Astonishing. They made a $250 million profit the very next year. Went from worst to first in many metrics, became one of the best places to work. Employees were winning for themselves, aligned with the company's success. It just powerfully demonstrates the link between culture, trust, and performance.
Sinek argues this taps into something fundamental about human success.
Yeah, he says our success as a species isn't really about individual strength or intelligence. It's our ability to form cultures groups built around common values and beliefs. Trust is the glue. Trust allows us to rely on others, which is essential. Think about early humans. You had to trust your community to protect your family while you went out hunting?
We naturally gravitate towards people who share our values.
Right. You become friends with people who see the world similarly. No matter how impressive someone seems, if your core values clash, a deep friendship is unlikely.
Like the American dream attracting immigrants.
It's not just about economics. It's that feeling, that WHY of independence, self-reliance, opportunity. People are drawn to that belief, and it creates that visceral, I love it here connection. Cultural fit matters hugely, whether it's choosing a city or choosing a company.
So the goal is finding people who believe what you believe. Shackleton's ad.
Oh, the Shackleton ad for his Antarctic expedition in 1914. It's legendary. It basically said, men wanted for hazardous journey, small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, constant danger, safe return doubtful, honor and recognition in case of success.
Sounds awful. Who would apply?
Exactly. Only people who thrived on insurmountable odds. People whose personal WHY aligned with extreme challenge and adventure. Sinek argues Shackleton didn't just hire skilled men. He hired men who believed what he believed. That guaranteed their resilience, their commitment to the cause, not just to him.
Like Southwest hiring cheerleaders and majorettes back in the day.
Yeah. When they had those somewhat controversial hot pants uniforms copied from another airline, they found that only cheerleaders and majorettes were applying. And they realized these women were perfect fits. Their natural disposition was about optimism, cheering people on, that we can win attitude. So Southwest started recruiting only them for a while.
Because they already embodied the WHY.
Precisely. Which leads to Sinek's key principle. Great companies don't hire skilled people and then try to motivate them with carrots and sticks. They hire already motivated people and then inspire them by connecting them to a shared WHY, a larger cause. Without that, even highly motivated people will eventually live for greener pastures.
To give him a cathedral story.
Love that one. 2 stonemasons doing the exact same job. Ask the first one what he's doing. He says, I'm building this wall. Sees only the task. Probably leave for a small pay raise. Ask the second one. He says, I'm building a cathedral. He sees the higher purpose, the grand vision. He'll likely work longer hours, turn down better offers elsewhere, feel a sense of camaraderie with his fellow builders. He feels part of something bigger.
It connects back to Langley versus the Wrights again.
Absolutely. Langley focused on achievement, fame, paid top dollar for talent. His team came for the money manipulation. When he failed, the money motive wasn't enough. He quit.
Right.
The Wrights were driven by a dream, a belief. They inspired a community who came for the cause. They endured failure after failure together because they believed in the cathedral, not just the wall. That's inspiration. That guaranteed their ultimate success.
So average companies give people something to work on.
while innovative organizations give people something to work toward, a purpose.
And that sense of purpose helps weather tough times.
Immensely. Sinek notes that innovation often comes from struggle when people share a WHY. Think of Edison finding 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb, or Southwest inventing that super fast 10-minute turnaround.
That came from struggle.
Yeah. Back in 1971, they were so short on cash they had to sell one of their only 4 planes. It seemed impossible to operate with just 3, but their people, driven by that common cause, rallied and figured out how to deplane, clean, prep, and board in just 10 minutes. That innovation, born of necessity, saves them billions today.
Wow. Let's talk about trust again and the Barings Bank collapse. Nick Leeson.
Yeah, a chilling example of what happens when trust breaks down. Leeson, a single rogue trader, brought down Barings Bank, one of Britain's oldest, most venerable institutions, in 1995. How? Unauthorized, high-risk trades he managed to hide because, incredibly, he was basically his own supervisor.
How could that happen?
Sinek argues the root cause was the bank's culture. It lacked trust and a clear, shared WHY. People were motivated almost entirely by huge personal payouts, not by any sense of collective responsibility or acting in the best interest of the whole bank.
A culture of fear or silence.
Yeah, there was this stigma against speaking out. Leeson himself said, "Nobody dared ask a stupid question." It created this toxic, every man for himself environment. Sinek calls it caveman stuff. When common values and beliefs erode, you lose all the benefits of community. Great organizations protect their people, foster belonging, which inspires reciprocal behavior, employees going the extra mile. Without it, it's just self-interest.
Which has huge hiring implications. The babysitter example.
Right. You'd trust an inexperienced teenager from your neighborhood, someone who shares your community values, to watch your kids over a highly experienced stranger, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Because you trust the shared values. Yet in hiring, companies constantly prioritize the resume, the skills, the experience, the watch over cultural fit and shared beliefs, the WHY. It's based on a false assumption about what makes the best employee.
Real trust comes from the things you can't see. Like that pilot story.
General Jumper and Captain Robinson, fantastic story. Jumper, a highly experienced F-15 pilot, was seconds away from mistakenly firing on friendly forces due to confusing radar signals.
Oh, wow.
Captain Laurie Robinson, his weapons controller on the AWACS plane, calmly and quickly corrected him, telling him where the real targets were. Her why wasn't just stare at the radar. She saw her job as clearing a path for the pilots, understanding her deeper purpose within the mission.
And Jumper trusted her instantly.
He had to. His own skills, the tangible what, were useless without trusting her judgment, which was built on her intangible clarity of WHY. Leaders like Robinson, Sinek says, lead with WHY, and organizations need to constantly reinforce that WHY and hold people accountable to values, otherwise passion fades, trust erodes, and office politics take over.
The influence of others plays a huge role here too, doesn't it? Personal recommendations.
Way more powerful than advertising, right? We trust friends who share our values. Like that waiter who advises you against ordering a certain dish, you trust them implicitly more than the one who says everything's amazing.
And celebrity endorsements only work if
the celebrity genuinely embodies the brand's WHY. It can't just be about fame, a high Q score. There needs to be an authentic values alignment for it to build real trust, not just temporary awareness. Otherwise, it feels hollow, like, why is this person selling that product?
Like the friend changing your mind about the Volvo versus the Mercedes.
Exactly. Hours of rational research, neocortex, can be instantly undermined by one trusted opinion from someone whose values, limbic connection you share, it plants doubt or shifts the decision entirely. Trust trumps data.
Which leads to how ideas actually spread the tipping point.
Right. Malcolm Gladwell talks about connectors and influencers, but Sinek asks the crucial next question. Why should they talk about you? What motivates them?
And this ties into the diffusion of innovations curve.
Perfectly. Everett Rogers' model shows how ideas spread. Innovators, 2.5%, then early adopters, 13.5%. These are the people on the left side of the bell curve.
And the ones who get it first.
Yeah, they're intuition-driven. They trust their gut. They'll pay more, put up with glitches, because they see the potential. They resonate with the WHY. Like your friend Nathan with 12 Bluetooth earpieces.
He was definitely an early adopter.
Then you have the early majority and late majority, that big chunk in the middle, 68%, and finally the laggards, 16%. These folks on the right side are much more practical. They need proof, trusted recommendations. They focus on rational stuff, price, features, ease of use. They're rarely loyal in the same way.
And the tipping point happens when you cross from the early market to the mass market.
Exactly. Sinek says you need to capture about 18% of the market, basically, win over the innovators and the early adopters to cross that chasm into the early majority. The majority won't try something until it feels safe, until someone they trust recommends it. Manipulations like price drops work well here to reduce perceived risk, but again, they don't build loyalty.
So the goal isn't to sell to everyone, especially not initially.
No. The goal is to find and connect with the people who believe what you believe, those on the left side of the curve. They'll perceive greater value, pay a premium willingly, and become passionate evangelists because your whats are tangible proof of their own WHYs.
Trying to target the middle with average conversion rates doesn't work.
Sinek argues it's expensive and ineffective for tipping the system. A 10% conversion rate might sound okay, but it's like throwing spaghetti against the wall. It won't create momentum. And trying to incentivize influencers just backfires it, makes them inauthentic, destroying the trust that made them influential in the first place. True believers share because they want to.
TiVo is the classic cautionary tale here.
Oh, TiVo, such a great product, launched in 1999. Amazing features. Pause live TV, rewind, skip commercials, learn your habit.
Revolutionary at the time.
Totally. Analysts loved it. But sales were incredibly disappointing. Only 48,000 units in the first year.
Why?
Right?
They focused on what it did.
Relentlessly, all features and rational benefits. And the mass market, largely technophobic back then, basically responded, I don't get it. I don't need it. This sounds complicated and scary.
How could they have done it differently, starting with WHY?
Sinek suggests a message like, if you're the kind of person who likes to have total control over every aspect of your life, boy, do we have a product for you.
Connect to a belief first.
Exactly. Then you introduce the features. It pauses live TV, it skips commercials, the WHY drives the decision, the what just rationalizes it. Because they failed to do this, TiVo, despite being superior technology, lost out. People use their generic cable DVRs, and TiVo became a verb for a competitor's product.
Ouch. Failure of communication, not product.
Precisely. Compare that to Harley-Davidson. People wait months, endure bad service by normal standards. Why? Because Harley resonates with their WHY, freedom, rebellion, whatever it is. TiVo never built that connection. Same with satellite radio, great features, big celebs, but focused on what? Ended up in a price war.
It comes back to giving people something to believe in. Like MLK Jr.
Exactly. Back to the March on Washington. King's genius wasn't just his ideas on what needed changing. It was his absolute conviction, his unwavering belief, his profound why change had to happen. His optimism was infectious.
He gave the I have a dream speech, not I have a plan.
Perfect point. It was a statement of purpose, a vision of the future. It offered America a place to go. It resonated deep in the limbic brain. People followed not just his idea, but their idea of a changed America that he articulated so powerfully.
He became the symbol of the cause.
The personification of the belief. That's why loyalty in business is similar. Employees turning down more money to stay because they believe in the WHY. They feel connected to the cause, not just the paycheck.
Okay, so we understand the importance of WHY, but how do you actually rally people? How do you build the organization to support it? Sinek talks about this duality of success, passion versus structure.
Right. Every great idea starts with passion, that initial spark, the WHY. It fuels the sacrifices entrepreneurs dropping out of school, working insane hours. It's intoxicating and attracts those first early adopter employees who just believe.
But passion alone isn't enough.
No, he cautions it often leads to burnout or failure. Passion needs structure to survive and scale, and that's where the HRW types come in. The people who are brilliant at building systems, processes, making things efficient. Interestingly, many successful entrepreneurs are actually how-W types who partner with a WHY type.
But there's a risk as companies grow.
A huge risk. The focus often shifts, almost unconsciously, from the WHY, the passion, to the what, the results, because they're easy to measure, and the hey W, the systems, the efficiency.
And the WHY gets fuzzy.
It gets fuzzy, passion dwindles, inspiration fades. For employees, it starts feeling like just a job, and that's when manipulations, bonuses, perks, threats become the main tools for keeping people around. Sinek calls this predictable drift the split.
He makes a clear distinction between WHY types and HW types.
Yeah, it's a really useful framework. WHY types are the visionaries. Overactive imaginations, huge optimists, always focused on the future that doesn't exist yet. Think Bill Gates, the Wrights, Steve Jobs, Herb Kelleher, Walt Disney. They inspire movements.
But they need help building it.
Absolutely. They desperately need HRW types, the realists, the builders. These folks live in the present. They're practical, methodical, brilliant at creating the structures and processes to make the vision a reality. Roy Disney, Walt's brother, was the classic HRW type, building the empire behind Walt's dreams.
Can HRW types succeed alone?
Sure, they can build solid, successful businesses. But WHY types often end up as starving visionaries without a strong HW-type partner to execute. The magic, the billion-dollar potential, the industry-changing impact that usually requires the special partnership between a WHY type and a HRW type.
Which clarifies the difference between vision and mission statements.
Exactly. The vision statement should be the articulation of the founder's intent, the WHY, that future state, the reason for being. The mission statement should describe the route, the guiding principles, the how you'll actually create that future. When both are clear, everyone understands their role.
So ideally, the CEO is the WHY type.
Often, yes. The CEO leads the cause, personifies the WHY, and the best CFOs or COOs are often high-performing HRW types, inspired by the vision but focused on building the structure. It requires immense trust between them. The HRW types usually aren't the ones preaching. They're building quietly behind the scenes.
And when this works, people just join the cause.
Voluntarily. Great organizations inspire people, employees, and customers to advance the cause without needing constant prodding or incentives. People spread the word because they want to, because they believe.
So how do you build megaphone for the WHY?
The organization is the megaphone. It's the structure that amplifies the founder's WHY. But, critically, clarity first. The message, the WHY, has to be crystal clear before you crank up the volume.
Volume alone doesn't work, like Oprah's car giveaway.
Right. Huge volume. Massive stunt. But did it build loyalty for Pontiac? Did anyone even remember it was Pontiac? Probably not, because the stunt wasn't clearly connected to their WHY. Volume without clear WHY is just noise.
Symbols need WHY too. Logos, flags.
Totally. A logo is just a picture until it becomes infused with meaning through the consistent expression of a clear WHY. Think Harley-Davidson tattoos again. That logo is a symbol of a whole belief system, a powerful connection that only happens when the WHY is strong and lived consistently.
Advertising needs to connect to the WHY too.
Absolutely. Apple's 1984 commercial, their Think Different campaign, they're timeless because they consistently, powerfully reinforce Apple's core WHY. When an ad really speaks to you, Sinek says, it's because it's hitting that limbic brain, resonating with your own beliefs.
This leads to his celery test. I like this one.
It's so simple and practical. The idea is what you do, your what's, must serve as tangible proof of what you believe, your WHY.
Explain the test.
Imagine you get advice on things to buy. Someone says buy celery, someone else says rice milk, another says Oreos and M&Ms. If you don't have a clear WHY, like maybe live a healthy lifestyle, you might buy a bit of everything. Your shopping cart is confusing. It's unclear what you stand for.
Right. No filter.
But if your WHY is live a healthy lifestyle, you instantly filter the advice. You buy the celery and the rice milk. You politely decline the Oreos and M&Ms. It's more efficient, guarantees you get value aligned with your belief, and it clearly communicates your WHY to anyone looking at your cart.
Can you have occasional Oreos?
Of course. Sinek says it's fine to make short-term decisions that don't perfectly align Enjoy the chocolate cake, as long as you recognize them as exceptions. If you make too many inconsistent decisions, your WHY starts to get fuzzy for yourself and others.
And this helps with scaling, making decisions.
Massively. A clear WHY acts like a filter, allowing anyone in the organization, not just the founder, to make decisions that are consistent and authentic. Southwest's open seating makes perfect sense for their WHY efficiency, egalitarianism. It would make no sense for Delta or United.
Like Volkswagen trying to sell that luxury car, the Phaeton.
Perfect example of failing the celery test. A $70,000 luxury sedan from Volkswagen, the People's Car Company. Technologically brilliant, apparently, but totally inconsistent with their WHY of affordable, quality transport for the masses. It felt wrong. That's why Toyota created Lexus. Honda created Acura, separate brands to pursue luxury without muddying their core brand's WHY.
Which brings us to maybe the biggest challenge of all, success itself. When the WHY starts to go fuzzy.
That's when the real trouble begins. Sinek uses the Walmart story, post-Sam Walton, as a prime example.
Walton's original WHY was strong.
Incredibly strong. He deeply believed in people and service, in this symbiotic relationship between the company and the community. Walmart was just what he built to serve that purpose.
But after he died, the split happened.
Big time. Sinek argues the company tragically confused its WHY, serving people, with its how, offering low prices. Cheap became the driving force, the de facto WHY. Efficiency and margins became everything.
And the consequences were huge.
Massive.
Yeah.
Walmart went from being this beloved community partner to being plagued by scandals mistreating employees, lawsuits over wages and conditions, communities actively blocking new stores. They lost their soul, Sinek suggests, their connection to Walton's original WHY.
And he contrasts that with Costco.
Yeah, under CEO James Sinegal. Sinegal seemed to embody Walton's original WHY focus on employees first. Costco pays significantly more than Walmart's Sam's Club, offers great benefits,
resulting in low turnover, high loyalty.
Exactly. Loyal employees acting as 120,000 ambassadors. Wall Street constantly criticized Sinegal for spending too much on his people, but he always defended it as simply very good business for long-term value and loyalty, keeping them out of the destructive price-only game.
This ties into that difference between being successful and feeling successful.
Right. That Gathering of Titans event at MIT, finding that 80% of these incredibly wealthy, accomplished entrepreneurs didn't feel successful.
Wow.
They missed the passion, the feeling they had when they first started, when the WHY was clear and driving everything.
So achievement versus success?
Crucial distinction. Achievement is tangible, measurable. It's the milestones. Money, market share, goals hit. It's what you want, motivated by external factors.
Okay. And success.
Success, Sinek defines, is a feeling, a state of being. It's that deep sense of fulfillment you get when you are clear and consistent in pursuing why you want it. It comes from the limbic brain.
The trap is chasing achievement only.
Yeah, mistaking achievement as the final destination. That inevitably leads to dissatisfaction, that is this all there is feeling. Achievements are just markers along the way, signposts on the ongoing journey of pursuing your WHY. The yacht is achievement. The happiness, the feeling of success is something else entirely.
And great leaders don't lose sight of the WHY.
Never. Even with immense success, their golden circle stays in balance. They keep pursuing the WHY, stay disciplined in the HOW, and remain consistent in the what.
Let's revisit that split happens concept in the life cycle of an organization. Starts with passion.
Always starts with an idea, fueled by the founder's passion, the WHY. Those first employees are believers, early investors willing to take risks.
But passion needs structure. How helps come in.
Right. And as the organization grows, scales, adds layers, that's when the split typically occurs. That moment when the clarity of the original WHY starts to get fuzzy.
The WHY and the what become disconnected.
Exactly. Decisions start being made based on spreadsheets and rational cases, not gut feelings or alignment with the core belief. The cathedral vision gets lost. It becomes just a job, and manipulations become the default tools. Sinek warns that if you don't actively manage the split, you risk becoming like AOL, once dominant, now a shadow, its original WHY completely lost.
But you can manage it. He gives examples of companies measuring WHY, not just what.
Yeah, fantastic examples. Christina Harbridge at Bridgeport Financial in debt collection.
Definitely this trend.
Notoriously focused on how much money collected, which leads to aggressive tactics. But Harbridge's WHY was different. Everyone has a story, deserves respect. So how did she measure performance?
Not by money collected.
No. She bonused her agents based on how many stories they heard in their calls, how much rapport they built, how well they understood the debtor's circumstances, measured the WHY, the empathy.
And the results.
Astounding. They collected 300% more than the industry average. And debtors actually did more business with the companies they originally owed money to, unheard of, all from measuring WHY.
And Dwayne Honor at Honors Construction, measuring work-life balance.
Another great one. His WHY was about people working to spend more time with family, not less, so his system. Employees had to clock out by 5:30 p.m. Staying later actually took them out of the bonus pool.
Wow, counterintuitive.
Totally. But wasted time plummeted. Productivity soared. Turnover was super low. People felt valued for their efficiency, not just face time. Every day is like the day before vacation, as one employee put it.
So measuring WHY creates real value.
Absolutely. Money measures what? Achievement. Measuring alignment with WHY builds value-driven cultures, creates perceived value beyond price, and fosters incredible loyalty.
Good successions are key to keeping the WHY alive too, right?
Critical. The leader, especially the founder, often personifies the WHY. They're the physical beacon. When they leave, the WHY is incredibly vulnerable.
Like Microsoft post Gates or Apple post Jobs the first time.
Textbook examples. Gates embodied the PC in every home, WHY. When he stepped back initially, Steve Ballmer, arguably more of a WATHO manager, took over. The inspiration shifted. Same with Apple when Jobs was ousted. John Scully, brought in by Jobs himself, was a brilliant how-adjub-you guy from Pepsi, but he didn't embody the WHY. Innovation stalled. Morale tanked.
Starbucks, too, when Schultz left.
Yeah, Schultz brought that third-place experience. Why? When he left the first time, the company focused intensely on growth. What processes, how agile you, and as he later admitted, the experience, the WHY, started to crack. He had to come back to restore it.
So the challenge is articulating the WHY for successors.
Huge challenge. Founders often live the WHY but struggle to put it into clear words, and successors often feel compelled to implement their own vision rather than seeing themselves as stewards of the original WHY.
Great successors continue the vision.
They see their role as carrying the torch, not lighting a new fire. Like Howard Putnam and Colleen Barrett at Southwest, who seamlessly continued Herb Kelleher's Everyman WOI, the culture remained authentic.
And Costco again, echoing Sam Walton.
It really feels like Senegal picked up Walton's original WHY torch after Walmart let it drop. Higher pay, better benefits, low turnover, relying on employees as ambassadors. Wall Street didn't get it, but Senegal knew it was good long-term business, building value through loyalty, not just chasing quarterly results. The stock performance divergence between Walmart and Costco over the years really tells the story of the cost of letting the WHY go fuzzy. Without WHY, the what eventually loses its context and its power.
Okay, so we've seen the power of WHY, the importance of keeping it clear, but how do you actually discover your WHY in the first place? Especially if it's gotten fuzzy or if you're starting something new.
Sinek digs into this, using Apple again as a deep example. Their WHY wasn't cooked up in a marketing meeting. It emerged from the specific context of their founding.
The 60s and 70s counterculture.
Exactly. Northern California, Vietnam War era, strong anti-establishment, anti-government sentiment. Wozniak and Jobs shared this deep belief that individuals were being squashed by big corporations and government. They envisioned a world where the individual could have a voice, could challenge the status quo.
And the personal computer was the tool.
It was their what? Wozniak, the engineer, built these simple, empowering machines. Jobs, the visionary, knew how to sell the revolution.
That 1984 ad.
A perfect manifesto. Not really about the computer's features, was it? It was this poetic, powerful ode to Apple's WHY, the lone individual rebelling against conformity, against Big Brother. It's still relevant today because the core WHY hasn't changed.
And that pattern continued. iPod, iPhone.
Challenging the established players, empowering the individual, first the music industry, then the mobile phone industry. Sinek argues Apple's ability to disrupt industries where they have no prior expertise comes directly from that unwavering purpose. Jobs wanting to put a ding in the universe.
Even their market share reflects their WHY, being smaller than Windows.
Sinek makes that interesting point. Apple's 2.5% historical market share versus Windows' 96%. Maybe it perfectly reflects Apple's WHY of challenging the status quo, appealing to those who see themselves as different. While Microsoft's WHY, under Gates' original vision, was about providing tools for mass productivity, a PC in every home. Different WHYs lead to different scales and focuses.
Even the I-branding?
Yeah, iPod, iPhone, iMac. It subtly champions the I, the individual. Consistent reinforcement.
So, discovering WHY, you look backwards.
That's the crucial insight. It's discovery, not invention. You don't brainstorm your WHY. You have to look back at your origins, your upbringing, your life experiences, the moments that shaped your core beliefs. Sinek uses the analogy of pulling back an arrow. You have to look 180 degrees away from the target to find the power.
It's not market research, then?
No. It's born from the personal story of an individual or a small founding group. The organization itself, the what, is just the tangible manifestation of that deeply personal WHY.
Sinek shares his own story of finding his WHY.
Yeah, very openly. He'd built a successful consulting business, technically beating the odds for years, but he'd lost the passion, felt demoralized, even depressed.
Despite the financial success.
Right. He realized he'd become totally focused on what he did, consulting, and how he was different, but he'd completely forgotten why he even started.
What was his original WHY?
It was curiosity. A deep drive to understand why some marketing, some communication worked and inspired people while so much else failed. He wanted to find a repeatable pattern beyond just luck.
And the golden circle was the aha moment.
Finding that overlap between the communication model and the biology of the brain, that was it. He realized his stress, his burnout, came directly from lacking clarity on his own WHY.
So he defined his WHYS.
To inspire people to do the things that inspire them. And living authentically meant sharing that insight, giving it away, no secret sauce. And that clarity, just starting with his own WHY, opened incredible doors. MSNBC, Congress work, even though he had no background in those areas. Same person, same knowledge, just operating from a different place.
Starting with WHY, it leads to this idea of the new competition.
Yeah, illustrated by that amazing story of Ben Coleman, the cross-country runner.
The slowest runner on the team.
By far. Struggles, falls, takes almost twice as long as others to finish. But the lesson Sinek draws is powerful.
What's the lesson?
When you compete against everyone else, nobody helps you. You're focused outward on beating them. But when you compete against yourself, striving to be better than you were yesterday, everyone wants to help you.
How does that play out for Ben?
After the faster runners finish, usually around 25 minutes, they don't just leave. They turn around, go back, and run with Ben. They cheer him on. If he falls, they pick him up. He finishes his race, often with dozens, sometimes 100 people running alongside him, supporting him.
Wow. That gives me chills.
Me too. It's such a powerful image.
So, applied to organizations.
What if companies focused more on being better than themselves, improving week over week, quarter over quarter, instead of just obsessing over beating competitors? Sinek suggests it would foster incredible internal collaboration and much greater external support and loyalty.
A world that starts with WHY. What would that look like?
Decisions would be simpler, Sinek believes. Less agonizing over purely rational factors. Loyalties would be deeper, more resilient. Trust would be the default currency. Optimism would flourish, and innovation would accelerate because people would be driven by purpose, not just profit or fear.
The goal isn't selling to everyone.
No, it's finding those who believe what you believe and working together for shared success. It's not about chasing the sweeter deal. It's about building relationships based on shared values. Sinek concludes that if our leaders consistently started with WHY, optimism truly would reign and innovation would thrive.
It's a really inspiring message itself.
It really is. The idea that if we each take responsibility to find our WHY, live it, and inspire others, we actually can change things for the better.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on Start With Why, maybe a final thought for everyone listening to mull over.
Yeah.
What is the real difference between just setting a goal and truly pursuing a purpose? Are you, in your own life, your work, mostly chasing external achievements, the what's? Or are you on that deeper, never-ending quest to live out your true WHY?
That's a great question to sit with. And how might actually articulating that WHY, getting clear on it, really change how you lead, how you connect, how you inspire the people around you?
We really hope this deep dive has left you not just, informed about Sinek's ideas, but genuinely inspired to explore your own WHY.